Ho, sweet morning. Welcome to the first episode of Dwarven Dad Rants. Today I'm just going to be talking about player versus DM mentality. Now, much like any kind of game, people get this mindset where it's, I have to beat somebody. And in a cooperative gameplay, that's not necessarily the healthiest option, especially when you're going into it with a team. Now, people think when I say team, it's like, oh, well, of course, it's a tabletop, it's D&D, it's Pathfinder. Of course you're working as a team. Yes. However, we always have those people, and you know who I'm talking about. They get what I like to call, and some other people call it, main character syndrome. Now, some of you have never played tabletop, you've never done a game like this, and you're here to learn. What main character syndrome is it's when one person gets it in their head that they are the single greatest player at that table. Maybe they make a character that's good at everything. Maybe they make a character that's spec'd for combat, for magic, something that makes them overpowered in some aspect. And then they think, well, now I get to be the leader. In a cooperative RP, sorry, in a cooperative TTRPG, you don't have a leader. I mean, you could have someone that you guys kind of defer to, maybe someone has a little bit more knowledge, maybe someone who's played a little bit longer, but they should not be the de facto leader. They should not just automatically assume that they're in charge. Um, Personally, as a DM, I like to try and give every one of my players the opportunity to head their own story. I might start with one person's backstory as like the first boss, then someone's backstory plays and comes up, and that's like a conflict that they got to solve for that one. And I always try and put that person to the front of the group at that specific time. But I by no means try and make them like, oh, this is so and so the paladin. He's got awesome charisma. He deals super damage. He's clearly in charge of our group. Now, if the group ever wants to make a party leader, that is completely up to them. However, if someone asserts themselves and pushes themselves to the lead of the pack for the sole purpose that, oh, well, you suck at this, I can do it better. No, you got to quash that immediately. Now, when I say, knock them down, I don't mean like kick them out of the group. I don't mean like give them all kinds of hell. I mean, talk to them on the side like, hey, man, I want everyone to have fun, and I kind of feel like you just keep stepping in the spotlight when I try and let someone else play. And if they want to fight you about that, or they say, oh no, I don't, just it sounds funny because as a teacher, I do this. Work out a signal, like, hey, I'm gonna kind of when I think you're trying to push someone out of the spotlight, and a lot of the time they'll say, you know what, do it, because I'll prove that I'm not taking up the spotlight. And so, at first, once in a while, and they'll get the hint. They'll kind of back up a little bit. And then there's the times where you're sitting there and they're not taking the hint whatsoever. They're like, well, we're trying to expand the story. We're trying to get further into the story. You're not the only one that's trying to play, though. They're not backup dancers. They're there to play the game too. And just because someone has a high charisma or they have stats that push them to the top doesn't mean they have to be in charge. I've seen players who rolled terribly. I'm talking 4s and 5s in their stats, but they were the party head. They couldn't communicate for jack with townspeople, but because they had the experience, they can kind of help others mediate their way through. Now, going further into what I said initially, player versus DM mentality. As a DM, it is not your job to make their life a living hell. Now, a lot of you see my cursed item videos. Again, I've been DMing a long time, and I do throw cursed items out. Of course, I do. Every DM does. And if you don't, you're missing out on some fun. But I'm getting some comments like, "Dude, what the hell? I would never play at your table. All you do is pick on your play." No, I don't. A lot of these items are for an inside joke between me and my friends, or there's something fun at the time, or there's something that they're going to be able to get rid of or use. My cursed items may seem like a monstrous thing to do. However, once my players either accept the curse, adapt to the curse, or just plain remove the curse, I don't destroy the item. They keep it. Now they have an OP weapon or an OP item. Or in one player's case, I gave them a cursed doll that was a nightmare to deal with. It was eating their magic items. It was stealing their stuff. You know what they did? He turned it into a familiar, and it became one of the most OP items in their group, and he formed a bond with it. It was like his actual baby. Secondly, players versus DM. players, you're not fighting your DM. I understand, like, because me and my players, we rouse each other. They'll say something to me, I'll say something to them, but they're not attacking me. They're attacking the story. They're attacking the bad guy. They're attacking the scenario. It should never be where they go home that night and they're thinking, how the hell am I going to screw Dwarven Dad over? No, it should be, dang, this bad guy completely wrecked us. How can we fight that? How how can we get around this obstacle? Anyway, it should be them trying to figure out how can they solve the problem in the story. Not, oh, this guy's an asshole. He's going to keep messing with the monsters to like just cream us. A DM should never want to TPK the party every single encounter. An encounter should be compelling. It should be not difficult per se, but it should be challenging. And some fights, guess what? They're not challenging. They don't have to be. You're a level 5 fighter is not going to have a problem with a goblin. But you know what? You throw 15 of them at him, and all of a sudden it turns this easy encounter, especially with multi-attack, it turns this easy encounter into something that seems epic. And if the player's just going 20, 16, 19, but they're not into the fight, then you're probably not describing it well enough as a DM. You slash down one, you put a fist through another's face, you flip another one over you. It's your job as a DM to make whatever mundane thing they got to do feel realistic or exciting. And players, have some common sense too. As a player, and I do this, I'm guilty of it. I will sometimes look for how can I cause trouble. Now, I don't think how can I cause trouble for the DM, which sometimes it can lead to that. But I think how can I cause trouble for, oh, this shopkeep charged me 55 gold for a health potion instead of 50. Oh, well, you know what? How can I mess with him? Or, oh, this guy pickpocketed me. What's the worst thing I could do to him? And a lot of players get this mentality of, I'm untouchable. The pickpocket, instead of just, knocking him out and taking him to the guards, they're like, I'm going to burn this entire village to the ground. Now, is that an appropriate response? No, but that's what a lot of players lean towards. The most structured and held back game I've ever played wasn't when I had a group of heroes trying to topple this evil minister. It was when we played a campaign, an evil campaign. They were allowed to be murderous. They were allowed to be psychotic. They were allowed to just go off the rails and go nightmarish. And they thought, well, no, how does a bad guy become this powerful to become? You don't get hordes of minions by burning villages. No, they started an infrastructure. They started a trade route. They did it legitly where they built an empire and they're like, now we can go corrupt and attack the neighboring kingdom. Yet for heroes, it seems like their go-to, I'm going to solve this with violence. It's like, I'm going to stop this bad guy with the power of friendship and a gun. So think about how your actions affect not just the scenario. Short-sightedness is probably the biggest issue with players I've ever seen, because it's all about instant gratification. It's never, how is this going to bite me in the butt down the line? It's like that experiment where they gave two kids and they said, here, you can have a piece of candy now, or if you wait 5 minutes, you can have two pieces of candy. And like 80% of those kids said, I want the candy now. And those kids that were able to abstain and wait, that got a better reward, they did better in life. Now, I'm not saying that treat your players like kids, but maybe remind them like, hey, if you slug this guard that works for the city, it's probably not going to bode well for you down the line. And if they still make that choice, then you know what? That was their choice to make. Give your players time to think about consequences and actions. And players, if you really are just like the embodiment of chaos, like, I took chaotic neutral for a reason. Well, then if you're going to go that route, then play it up. Your character is straight up insane. If they're not responsible for their actions, then the people around are not responsible for what they do to stop those actions. Again, this is just the first episode of Dwarven Dad Rants, and I just want to get that off my chest. And what I do with my cursed items are my business.